Hi, I'm John Green. This is Crash Course U.S. History, and today we're going to talk about the United States Constitution. And in doing so, we're going to explore how the American style of government became the envy of the entire world, so much so that everyone else copied us. What's that, Ben? We're not going to talk about other countries stealing our form of government because no other country stole our form of government? That doesn't seem possible, Stan.
No, Stan, not the libertage. Cue the intro. So today we're going to learn why the green areas of not America didn't copy us. All right, so as Americans may dimly remember from history classes, the constitutional system we've been living under since 1788, the year of the first presidential election, was not the original American government. The first government set up by the Continental Congress was called the Articles of Confederation, and it was, in a word, bad. In 2 words, it was not good, which is why it only lasted 10 years. The problem with the Confederation is that it wasn't so much a framework for a national government as it was a firm league of friendship, which unfortunately only sounds like a team of Care Bear superheroes. The Articles set up a government that consisted of a one-house body of delegates, with each state having a single vote, who, acting collectively, could make decisions on certain issues that affected all the states. There was no president and no judiciary. You can try to tell me that John Hanson, the president of the Congress, was the first American president, but it's just not true. Any decision required 9 of the 13 congressional votes, which pretty much guaranteed that no decisions would ever be made. Ah, supermajorities, always so efficient. But besides the 2/3 requirement, the Congress was very limited in what it could actually do. The government could declare war, conduct foreign affairs, and make treaties. Basically the stuff you need to do to go to war with England. It could coin money, but it couldn't collect taxes. That was left to the states. So if you needed money to, say, go to war with Britain, you had to ask the states politely. The Articles could be amended, but that required a unanimous vote. So 0 amendments were ever passed. The government was deliberately weak, which followed logically from Americans' fear of tyrannical governments taxing them and quartering soldiers in their houses and so on. But here's the thing, weak government is like non-alcoholic beer. It's useless. That said, the Articles government did accomplish a couple things. First, it won the war, so yay! Unless you were a slave or a Native American, in which case, you know, probable boo. Second, the government developed rules for dealing with one of the most persistent problems facing the new nation, Ohio, which was called the Northwest, presumably because it is north and west.
이 사람이야.
Getting control of the land meant taking it from the Indians.
시작한 거야? 지금 그냥 쉬는 시간이라서.
Make treaties, which it did.
이분이 지금 앞에도 수업이 있거든.
Remember the Athenians telling the Melians that the strong do as they can and the weak suffer.
이탈리안 아메리칸이야.
And the Americans definitely went to the Athenian school of treaty making. For a treaty signed at Fort Stanwix and Fort McIntosh, the Indians surrendered land north of the Ohio.
운동공단에 가면 이탈리안 선생님이 있고
Northwest Ordinance of
그렇지?
1780, which set up
완전 톨릭이지.
new states between the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. 2 things to know
그분이
about this.
미사를 보면은
Indians had a claim to the land and that they had
귀여워.
better if settlers wanted to avoid violence. And second, Stan, can I get the foreshadowing filter? Yes, perfect. The ordinance outlawed slavery in all 5 of the new states. Still, the Articles government was a complete disaster for exactly one reason. It could not collect taxes. Both the national government and the individual states had racked up massive debt to pay for the war, and their main source of revenue became tariffs, but because Congress couldn't impose them, states had to do it individually. And this made international trade a total nightmare, a fact worsened by the British being kind of cranky about us winning the war and therefore unwilling to trade with us. In 1786 and 1787, the problem got so bad in Massachusetts that farmers rose up and closed the courts to prevent them from foreclosing upon their debt-encumbered farm. This was called Shays' Rebellion after Revolutionary War veteran and indebted farmer Daniel Shays. The uprising was quelled by the state militia, but for many, this was the sign that the Articles government, which couldn't deal with the crisis at all, had to go. But not for everyone. Thomas Jefferson, for instance, was a fan of Shays' Rebellion. A little rebellion now and then is a good thing. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Which is all fine and good, I mean, unless you're the bleeding patriot
patriots or tyrants. But to most elites, Shays' rebellion showed that too much democratic liberty among the lower classes could threaten private property. Also, people who held government bonds were nervous because without tax revenue, they were unlikely to get paid back. And when rich people feel like something has to be done, something is usually done. Let's go to the thought bubble. The first attempt to do something was a meeting in Annapolis in 1786 aimed at better regulating international trade. Only 6 states sent delegates, but they agreed to meet the next year in Philadelphia to revise the Articles of Confederation. The delegates who met in Philly the next year had a funny definition of revision, though. Rather than make tweaks to the Articles, they wrote a new charter of government, the Constitution, which is, with some significant alterations, the same one that Americans live under and argue about today. Despite what some seem to believe, the 55 men who met in Philadelphia and hammered out a new form of government were not gods, but they were far from ordinary, especially for the time. Most were wealthy, some very much so. More than half had college educations, which was super rare since 0.001% of Americans attended college at the time. About 40% had served in the army during the war. But one thing they all shared was a desire for a stronger national government. The delegates agreed on many things. The government should have executive, legislative, and judicial branches and should be Republican with representatives rather than direct democracy. But the devil appeared in the details. Alexander Hamilton, probably the biggest proponent of very strong government, wanted the president and Senate to serve life terms, for example. That idea went nowhere because the overarching concern of almost all the delegates was to create a government that would protect against both tyranny by the government itself and tyranny by the people. They didn't want too much government, but they also didn't want too much democracy, which is why our presidents are still technically elected not directly by regular people, but by 538 members of the Electoral College. This system is so Byzantine and strange that when American politicians speak of spreading democracy through the world, they never actually advocate for American-style elections. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Yes, I know.
Hey, everyone. And this is our first Zoom meeting, and we'll probably have more because there's a number of holidays through the semester. So let me do the housekeeping that we need to do here, and first go to the Cyber Campus, and let me open up the correct Cyber Campus class, and go to attendance and click on Smart Attendance. And so let me share that frame there, and there you can see there is the class, cyber class, and your smart attendance number is 354. 354 is your smart attendance number, so please enter 354. And what I typically do then is also go to the back to the Zoom and go to the chat function and put in 354 and then send that off. And so 354 is your sign-in number, and so that is taken care of. I will after we're finished here, I will post the link to the video recording of the Cyber Campus on the of the class on the Cyber Campus, so you can go watch it again if you want to, and of course use the captions to translate into French or Korean or whatever language, let me see what else. Okay, yeah. Also, speaking of Cyber Campus, and we go back to the Cyber Campus here and share. And so you saw if you got the notification from me. Oh, before I forget, also let me also talk about, since I talked about the other class, close this, and let me do the stop share, and let me again do the Cyber Campus to remind people to sign up for debate if they haven't signed up for debate. So I think the history class has been a little bit more active here in terms of signing up for debate here. So we see, but nobody is signed up for this week. I think the first one is so far is Gwen on week 6. So Gwendolyn is week 6, but of course the rest of you can also sign up for debates. Just to remind you that that is there, because we will also use the shared document, Google document, to schedule a meeting with me for us to discuss one-on-one your first draft of your midterm paper. And the midterm paper is, if I can find it, go back to the, I forgot to open it up here. A second, we go back to the, let me open up the Cyber Campus again, and because I closed it, and then we, So we go here and go to cyber. So now I stop share and then go back here to share and go here. Okay. And so you can see I posted the midterm assignment paper here. And so here is the midterm assignment, and it is, let me get this out of the way here. And to write a 400 to 450, it should be 450 to 550 word paper on what are the significant differences between Zinn and Flynn. So what do I mean by that? You got a sense from the class already that when we started the class that Howard Zinn has been dead for 14 years now, but his ideas and of course the concern among people that don't like Zinn that his students, including all of his students from college, who then go on to become, among other things, teachers and college professors, that Flynn is teaching, I'm sorry, Howard Zinn is teaching, or has been teaching, and his book that we are using is teaching American students to be ashamed of their country. And it's obviously controversial enough for people like even Donald Trump, when he was running for president, to explicitly mention the distaste that his base feels for Howard Zinn and Howard Zinn's perspective on American history. And Howard Zinn has also people who, with more academic background, who also don't like him. So it's not just politicians and their supporters that don't like Howard Zinn. There are people that claim to be academics, that claim to be very smart and very well educated, who also don't like Howard Zinn. And maybe the most well-known of those is this person named Daniel Flynn, one of the most well-known academic types who has taken the lead along with the, to give expression to what is today the Make America Great Again movement of Donald Trump, but had its roots long before Make America Great Again, before Donald Trump became a presidential candidate 8 years ago, 9 years ago in 2015. This attack on Zinn and his ideas began long before Donald Trump became president. And Daniel Flynn is the academic face of the attack on Howard Zinn. And this article, which is still available on the internet, it's still available and is still controversial. I mean, if I were to show you, for example, if I go open up a Google Drive here and I type in and make sure I'm sharing screen, I'm sharing the right screen. So I go here, share the screen, and that's interesting. Is that? Yes. Yeah, so if you type in Howard Zinn, Daniel Flynn on Google, see what comes up if you type this in. And you get this, right? So you can see something from 2011, making reference to Daniel Flynn's attack on Howard Zinn. This is from, this is just doing a Google search. Something from 2012. This controversial attacks on Zinn have been so strong and so controversial and have gained so much support from the people that hate Zinn that American school systems, American universities, American college campuses, they've had to take into consideration or allow this discussion to be part of their debate about Howard Zinn and his book. So this is just what I typed in, Zinn and Daniel Flynn. This is what you can find, right? Is Howard Zinn a Marxist? What is Howard Zinn's view of history? And I checked this yesterday, and I came across this, which of course, this is written 7 years after the essay that's in your midterm paper assignment. So this is 14 years old, highlighting that, guess what? That the FBI, again, this is Daniel J. Flynn, in this article from 14 years ago, written 7 years after the essay that's in your homework and your midterm assignment, points out that apparently Howard Zinn had some kind of affiliation with the Communist Party of the United States at some point, which is a controversial claim, given, and so you can read this on your own. It's short, noting that the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, investigated Zinn. So Daniel J. Flynn, author of A Conservative History of the American Left, blogs at W. Flynn. Again, just to point out that this controversy is continuing. So let's go back to the homework assignment, the midterm assignment, and if I can see, where did it go? Let's see. Go back here to Cyber Campus, and Cyber Campus. Where's the Cyber Campus? There's Cyber Campus. And so stop share, and I got to make sure that I do like this. So make sure you can see the Cyber Campus, and there you can see, there's the assignment. So the assignment asks you to compare and contrast Zinn and Flynn. What are the significant differences between Zinn and Flynn? What criticism does Flynn put forth of Zinn as a historian? Flynn claims that not only Zinn is a Marxist, he's a bad historian, that Zinn doesn't even do good history. And it says here, as a Korean or international, I can fix that right now. We can fix this right now. So we go edit here to put this a 5 in there. Okay, there, I feel better now. Save. And so you can see here is Howard Zinn's biased history. This is from 2003. And it says here, Mr. Flynn is executive director of accuracy in academia, author of the newly released Why the Left Hates America, exposing the lies that have obscured our nation's greatness. So he starts off. Daniel Flynn writes, who is the most influential historian in America? Could it be Pulitzer Prize-winning authors Arthur Schlesinger Jr. or Joseph Ellis or David McCullough, whose scholarly works have reached a broad literary public? The answer is none of the above. That the accolade belongs instead to the unreconstructed anti-American Marxist Howard Zinn, whose cartoon Anti-History of the United States is still selling 128,000 copies a year, 20 years after its original publication. Many of those copies are assigned readings for courses in colleges and high schools taught by leftist disciples of their radical mentor. People, I guess, like me, right? He's arguing it's not just the fact that Howard Zinn wrote a bad history book. Lots of people write bad books. So what? But Flynn is going to criticize not just Howard Zinn, he's going to criticize American universities. That there's a fundamental problem with American universities, that people like me, who are making you, my students, read the Zinn book. Out of all the books I could have chosen, all of the textbooks for college class on American history that I could have chosen, I have chosen and made you, as my students, read that book. And that's why it's the most popular book in the world, in American history, because American university professors and American universities in general have a bias against being proud of America, being proud of the United States. They don't like America. They're hostile to the United States. They're hostile to the traditional American values that made America the most powerful and most successful country in the world. So it's not just a problem with Howard Zinn. It's a problem with American universities. It's a problem with American academics. That universities somehow are a source of I almost said they're a source they're a source of disloyalty. They're a source of degeneracy. They're a source of treason. That they're a source of the breakdown. They're an engine for the breakdown in American society, since Americans now are taught that there is no truth, that there is no fundamental value to certain fundamental there's no fundamental greatness in American values that you should know, and instead be taught to question everything, including the most basic and elemental notions like there's a man and a woman. Oh, guess what? You can be trans. Gender is fluid, right? And this all goes back to the 1960s and the Howard Zinn-led social movements. People like Howard Zinn provided the academic background for it, provided the academic leadership, the intellectual articulation, expression of what the demands were, that somehow that the Vietnam War and America's involvement in the war somehow represented, was the manifestation of the ultimate badness of American society and American the American community based upon capitalism and democracy. And so and of course the 1960s not only gave us the anti-war movement against the Vietnam War, it was also the engine or fuel for all the other new left social movements that began at the time. The feminist movement that again is particularly a source of hostility among the core enthusiast group of Trump supporters today, right? Because the feminists are the ones that made it legitimate to challenge notions about, the traditional American family. That somehow the traditional American family, where you have a man and a woman and they get married, the man plays his role, the husband plays his role, the wife plays her role. The man typically is the one who is, for lack of a better term, the primary, the head of the family. The woman's job, she can work. I think people accept that women can work, but a career is not, for most women, is not going to be their primary focus. Their primary focus is on raising the children. And that you should be proud of that. You should be proud of being a housewife. I mean, when I grew up, I grew up in working class America, working middle class America. Women, the women that lived in our neighborhood, they all stayed at home. The men went to work and the women stayed at home all day. And now we're taught that those women, that they're somehow inferior. That a woman should pursue other primary objectives in life. So you see that in the political campaign now in the United States, with J.D. Vance, the vice presidential nominee, talking about childless cat ladies, that America's has too much influence under women, that made this wrong choice of giving up their primary obligation to be raising children instead to focus on careers. And so they're too old to have children, and so they've adopted cats, and they're angry and upset and discontented, and they're going to take that out on the rest of America. Why are they unhappy? Well, they made a false choice because they were deluded by people like Howard Zinn and his disciples to claim that, a woman raising children is somehow a woman who is brainwashed. If that's all she wants to do in her life, is focus on raising a family. So, that's the source I'm giving you for this argument. That basically he's attacking Zinn, but he's also attacking a university system that's not just teaching college students, but also training future teachers who then go out and then also in the schools, not just in the colleges, not just college professors, but training teachers to go teach their children that that gender is fluid, that it's okay to be gay. Being gay is not something to be ashamed of. All these very sensitive cultural war topics. So he goes on here. Objectivity is impossible, Zinn's one remarks, is also undesirable. That is, if it were possible, it would be undesirable, because if you have any kind of social aim, if you think history should serve society in some way, should serve the progress of human, should serve justice in some way, then it requires that you make your selection on the basis of what you think advances cause humanity. And he's saying that, so in other words, he's claiming that Zinn is claiming that there's no such thing as objective history, that history as a field of study has to serve some ideological aim. And Zinn's a Marxist. So from a Marxist perspective, that's how he's going to teach American history. So since America is capitalist, American history is going to be bad. That it's all about exploitation. It's all about the control of the rich, powerful few over the poor masses, of how the rich and powerful divide and keep the poor masses divided and weak so they can be further exploited, that the rich and powerful promote racism and use racism to keep the weak and poor divided and weak. And all the great achievements of America, that's secondary. There is no great achievements of America. That America was founded on slavery, that America became rich through slavery, that America became powerful through its use of military force to enforce exploitation of the lands of the indigenous people, and to import Black people and make them work with no pay as enslaved people. But again, the focus here about how it's not okay. So Zinn's book is bad, according to Flynn. So what? But he's also highlighting that Hollywood, as well as American universities, they promote this book. They promote this mindset. They promote this among young people who, they want to rebel against the control of their parents. So they look to Hollywood and entertainment industry figures in the music industry, in the film industry, to look for role models to challenge the traditional notions and norms of behavior that their parents and grandparents learned. So he mentions how Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, they've spoken positively about Howard Zinn. I mean, who's Ben Affleck? Who's Matt Damon? What do they know? But because they become capitalist fashion, because they become Hollywood entertainment industry idols, people follow them and listen to them. And you want to be cool like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. So yeah, you like Howard Zinn too. And so again, more criticism of American universities. So again, that Zinn's book should be required reading for students. Professors have heeded this counsel. Of course, at the University of Colorado Boulder, UMass Amherst, Penn State, and University are among the dozens of classes nationwide that require the book. The book is so popular that it can be found on the class syllabus in such fields as economics, political science, literature, and women's studies, in addition to its more understandable inclusion in history. So Amazon.com reports, this is again from almost 19 years ago. In its site's popular in section that the book is currently number 7 at Emory University, number 4 at the University of New Mexico, number 9 at Brown University, number 7 at the University of Washington. So all of these universities are making their students read this book. So again, he's claiming that Zinn's book is an apology for rebellion against the United States, for hostility to the United States, and so I'm not going to read it all through here. I'll let you read it. And despite, again, comparing with the fact that the bloodiest killings and repressions of the world have happened under Marxists and communists, from Stalin's Soviet Union to Mao's China to Kim Il-sung's North Korea. But when you read the Howard Zinn book, you read about, and you don't read about the great achievements of America. You don't read about, there's no discussion in the book about America putting a man on the moon in 1969 and doing it 5 times. That's not in the book, right? The achievements of the United States, that's not a focus. So we're going to focus on the U.S. Constitution, right? Today in our exercise. We have to write the U.S. Constitution. And the book highlights that the U.S. Constitution is a self-serving document meant to support the power and protect the economic interests of the people that wrote the Constitution. Whereas, you know, you think about the American Revolution, the American Constitution. I mean, that was a new thing emerging in the 18th century. That never happened before. A national liberation struggle. I mean, the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution that emerged, 11 years after the Declaration of Independence. These were radical documents. These were radical movements that inspired other revolutions around the world. I mean, the French Revolution that happened just a couple years after the U.S. Constitution was written in 1789. They knew that the Americans had provided a model to encourage that revolution in France. So I'll let you read all of this on your own, rather than me read it for you. But he also says that the book is basically, first off, for example, he says in the book that that George, he not only criticizes Zinn as an ideological Marxist, using an ideological Marxist framework for analyzing American history, right? So if he's a Marxist, he's going to emphasize class conflict, and that means exploitation of the rich and powerful class of the poor classes. So exploitation and violence is going to be a focus of the book. That's going to be the focus of American history, according to Howard Zinn. And the resistance and rebellion against it, against the evil rulers, authorities of America. But then he also points out that his history is not even accurate. He says, for example, that in the book it says that George Washington, I think he says George Washington was the richest man in America. You know, George Washington, that all Americans are taught to be sort of a hero. The father of America, the father of the United States, who led the American independence armies and became the first president and set the precedent that became so powerful in establishing what the role of the president would do in the United States. You know, we're taught that he was, like Sejong the Great in for Koreans, right? Or, I guess Napoleon for the French, right? And but you know that George Washington, and he says Howard Zinn's wrong. He wasn't the richest man in America. Flynn says Zinn is wrong. He wasn't the richest man in America. So there's a concrete fact where Zinn is wrong. But more widely, Flynn claims that Zinn is guilty of censorship by omission. He doesn't talk about the horrible atrocities that the American Indians committed, like as if it's the poor American Indians confronting these violent, exploitative, rapacious American Puritan colonists who are coming to take their land. Zinn doesn't talk about the horrible things that the Indians did to the colonists and to each other. So the case study, the Pequot War. So when you write your midterm papers, you'll probably focus on that. Again, you can use the index in the back of the book. Like I have a paper copy of the book here, right? So when I ask you to compare and contrast Zinn and Flynn, some of you are probably going to focus on the Pequot War. So, it says here, the war climaxed between the Indians and the Puritans in Fort Mystic, was burned in a battle, and also in Maine of 1937. Okay, so he talks about how Zinn portrays the Pequot War. What the Pequot violence against the whites that led to the war is almost entirely absent from the book, Zinn's book. The most Zinn can bring himself to admit is that massacres took place on both sides. In fact, the author details only atrocities committed by one side, the Puritans. While graphic descriptions of Puritan violence are highlighted, Pequot atrocities are brushed aside. Here are some examples not to be found in Zinn. They took two men out of a boat and murdered them with ingenious barbarity, cutting off first the hands of one of them, then his feet, writes 19th century John Graham about the Pequot's assaults on settlers. So he goes on, he said, none of the cruelty of the Indians is highlighted here. And so, this is my paper copy of the book. you can use the index at the back of the book to look up Pequot War. Because remember, I'm going to ask you to use and cite specific information from at least 3 different chapters, from chapters 1 through 12, the first half of the book, to support and develop and refine your arguments in your essay. So so you can look up, you can look in the back of the book and you look up Pequot, and you can look up P for Pequot and see what Zinn has to say about the Pequot War. So you go here and if I can find it here. Pequot Indians, right? Page 1415, Pequot Indians. So, okay, so just again, to highlight here, again, other points that he points out in terms of how Zinn's book, if you just read Zinn's book, I mean, you would view the United States as this country that's founded upon exploitation and abuse. But again, he's writing this essay in 2003, and communism had collapsed in the Soviet Union by the end of 1991. When you look at America, you see how influential it is all around the world, and clearly there must be something exceptional in a positive way about America, which Zinn is not covering. Zinn is not covering. And it's not just Zinn. Again, it's American universities that somehow attacking American universities make students read this book. When America confronts tremendous challenges in the world today in 2003, when this essay was written, and 21 years later in 2024, challenges from China, challenges from he would call them jihadist terrorists. How are you going to fight for America if you read this book and you learn about how bad America is? Are you going to resist the Chinese demands in the South China Sea if you know that America was involved in some bad things in China in the end of the 19th century, when the Europeans began to divide up China into spheres of influence? Are you gonna defend America's influence in Korea when you know that the United States was always looking for economic exploitation opportunities in Asia, to expand into the Philippines and other places in Asia? I mean, what about spreading the ideals of democracy? What about all of those principles that must have played a role? I mean, if America is all about money, 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 and using violence to get more and more money to oppress people, how come it's so influential? Why is America so influential if it's all based upon capitalist exploitation and abuse enforced through guns and torture and enslavement? How come the whole world is interested in America? Why are you in this class? Why do you have me as a professor? Why do you have an American-style university if America is such a vicious, exploitative, violent political system based upon capitalist exploitation and the brainwashing to keep people docile and submissive and divided and weak? Why didn't Stalin win? Why isn't this class in Russian or in Chinese? Why didn't the Germans win in the Second World War, and the Japanese win in the Second World War, if America's as the evil cartoon image of American history that's portrayed in the Zinn book? What about the positive things that make America so attractive? Is it just about money? Really, just about money, huh? So, and of course, like I said, this essay was published 21 years ago, but of course it still pops up, and again, and it pops up because Zinn is a metaphor, a vehicle for all of what the right wing in the United States sees as a problem with American intellectuals and American universities, that they're inherently biased against traditional American values. And that's why they're, the sources of the centers of radicalism in America. And they're centered in radicalism because American professors, people that, again, we talked about this in class, that there is a strong skepticism towards intellectualism and education in America, going back to its founding, going back to, the fact that America was founded by people that didn't have the social status and advantages that dominated traditional Europe, right? Education was a luxury that was something that that European aristocrats benefited from, and so there's always been the suspicion of intellectuals in the United States. And of course, intellectuals are useful for making, if it's a skill that can be used to make America stronger and more powerful in the world, that's okay. But this notion that you should, be challenging fundamental notions of the American creed, right? That socialism is a good thing. Oh yeah, socialism is a good thing. In other words, private property is bad. America is based upon the acquisition of the pursuit of happiness, right? As John Locke said, people have the fundamental inherent God-given right to life, liberty, and the ownership of property. And then the American revolutionaries, in writing the Declaration of Independence, they translated life, liberty, and the ownership of property. That, you're going to fight a war against Britain. You got to get people motivated. So you're going to say we're fighting for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But that's the rephrasing of the ownership of property. How do you get happy? Get economic security and luxury. And if you're successful at that, you should have respect and status and maybe even authority. And again, this sounds like it's caricature, but this is the main source of support for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, he's anti-intellectual. He likes to portray himself as a self-made businessman, although he's not. But that's what he likes to portray himself as. And he's the enemy of these people that hate traditional American values, which Seymour Martin Lipset calls the American creed. So, and so I ask you, as a Korean or international student, because we have some French students and others, and Turkish and Indian students, would your presidents, leaders of your respective homeland states, prefer you to have as your U.S. history teacher? Who would they prefer, Zinn or Flynn? Would your preferences be different from yours, and why? If you're from India, would Modi want you to study Zinn or Flynn as your American history teacher? If you're from Turkey, would Recep Tayyip Erdogan want you to have Zinn or Flynn as your history teacher? If you're from South Korea, would Yoon Suk Yeol want you to have Zinn or Flynn as your history teacher? Given whom Yoon Suk Yeol is, his right-wing movement, and the fact that South Korea's main adversary is North Korea, communist, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, communist North Korea. And you might have to fight them, like you fought them before in 1950, and millions died in that war. Were they all fools to resist Mao Zedong and Kim Il-sung? So again, any questions about the debate topic? Okay, if not, then let's go to our in-class. Oh, we have chat. What's this chat here? So 2 new messages. Well, the attendance number is 354. You see it there. I sent it out to everybody. Okay, so anyway, okay, so you see it, 354 is your attendance number. So all right, so let's go now. This is going to be fun because we get to do this on Zoom. In a lot of ways, Zoom is easy to organize because it does some cool things. Now, I haven't used Zoom until today for several months because I was using it in the spring, of course, at times. And when I come back to Zoom now, they've made some upgrades, some changes, and And so hopefully I'll be able to do this without much problem. So we go back to Zoom here. And so what I want to do here is divide you into 5 groups. And so let me see how I can do this. So participants, and you know what? How can I do this here? Come on, breakout rooms. So I'm going to assign you to breakout rooms. So I'm going to assign you to 5 different groups. And I want you, so let's create here and assign automatically. So I'll assign you automatically. And so I'm going to assign you to 5 different groups. So here we go. And say here, okay, so you can see the, I assume you can see this. So let me see here if I can make sure I share, and you can see I think you can see the breakout room. So we're going to rename room 1 as workers, room 2 as bankers, merchants, room 3 as enslaved people, room 4 as farmers, and let me see here, what's the other room? So we have here, we go back to material, and we've got it broken up into planters. Oh, planters. So go back and go back to room 5, and then you rename that planters. Okay, and so so let me then open all the rooms. So please join the rooms. Join the rooms. Join your rooms. Okay, so yeah, you're now all in your rooms, so I'm broadcasting to all of the rooms. And so you can see on the cyber campus that that the workers are at we're at the American Constitutional Convention. We're writing the American Constitution. And so the workers are at the convention, the bankers, merchants are at the convention, enslaved people, well, you don't have a voice at the convention, but we're going to let you have a voice anyway. Farmers are at the convention and planters are at the convention. And so you have to decide what you want in the Constitution, the new draft Constitution for organizing the US government that was discussed here in the video that we were showing at the start of the class. And so you're in your room. So let me go back to the cyber campus and ask you, here are the burning issues. So also you see you have the burning issues at the convention under the material. So please download that link as well. And so make sure we stop share, and then I should go to share. And so you can see this file here, share, and you can see. Slavery is now legal in some states. Should it continue to be legal in any of the United States? And writing this Constitution, right? So it's not legal in all the states. In some states it is, particularly in the southern states that's based upon cotton farming, right? Black slaves are still brought into the southern states like Virginia and South Carolina from outside the country to be sold to white plantation owners. Should the Constitution continue to allow this slave trade? Sometimes slaves went away from their owners in the South and come north. The northern states like New York and Pennsylvania, slavery is illegal there. Should Northerners be forced to turn over runaway slaves to their owners? All of these issues have to be addressed in this new Constitutional Convention. Remember, this Constitutional Convention is being held after there was a rebellion, Shays Rebellion, which was put down, but the government was unable to implement, able to deal with this problem. So what ended up happening was that rich people in Massachusetts hired private armies to put down Shays Rebellion. And that showed the writers of the Constitution that this government is really, really weak. And if we don't create a stronger government, we're going to have more rebellions. And sooner or later, the French and the British might come back. The French and the British military, the French and the British governments might come back. And because we can't even organize an army to put down our own a rebellion inside the United States. So we have to come up with a stronger, but we have to organize a government in a way that's going to, everybody agrees to it. And we have tensions between rich and poor, enslaved and free people, farmers and merchants and bankers, and we have to reconcile and of course enslaved people, and we have to somehow reconcile or make compromises that reflect the interests of these different groups in American society. And but the Constitution is going to be written as is said by, I think, 44 individuals that represent the rich and powerful groups in America, right? It says here, some state legislatures have passed laws allowing debtors, that is people who owe money, to pay their debts in kind with cows, pigs, tobacco, corn, etc. So if you're a farmer who took a loan from a bank, you can pay back that loan to the bank, not with money, but with pigs, or not with money, but with corn, or not with money, but with tobacco. And even if the price of pigs has fallen because there's a problem on the economy, you can still pay off your loan by giving the bank some pigs or some whiskey or some corn. This is a traditional method of paying debts in some parts of the country. Should the federal government, the new government that's being formed with the Constitution, continue to allow paying off debts in kind? And of course, that was a big issue with Shays' Rebellion, right? That these farmers in the state of Massachusetts, because of an economic depression, they weren't able to pay off their loans because the price of commodities, the price of pigs, the price of corn had fallen very low. And so they weren't able to make any money on their production, enough money to pay off their loans. So the bank was coming and saying, well, we have to take your farm because since you can't pay back your loan, you have to give me your farm as the bank. And of course, some of these people were veterans. They had fought in the Independence War. They had seen their friends die. They might have been wounded. They might have been hurt in that war. And now they're going to lose their farm, even though they had fought in the Revolutionary War and risked their lives. And also, they had given loans to the government to fight the war against the British by purchasing bonds, right? The government at the time, under the Articles of Confederation, was promising people that if you buy this bond, in 10 years, we'll pay back the bond with 10% interest. And then the government wasn't paying back the bonds. It wasn't clear when they were going to pay back the bonds. And so you have these bonds that you owe that you're hoping to make an investment and get the money back that you bought the bond with, plus some additional money, interest. And now you have to pay back the bank. You still haven't gotten paid back with the bond. You haven't gotten money from the bond that you were promised. You were going to be paid back with interest. God knows when this is going to be paid back. And now the economy has gone into depression. You can't make any money on your corn and pigs and other things to pay back your loan to the bank. So and so some people are coming around and saying, okay, I'll tell you what, you need money right now. What we suggest is that how about I make you an offer. I will buy your bond from you for 10% of its value. So you don't know when you're going to get the money, when you're going to get your money investment back. You need the money now. I'll tell you what, I'll give you 10 cents for every dollar of your bond. So I'm going to buy the bonds from you, a desperate poor farmer, for 10% of its value. And people are buying the bond, selling the bonds at 10% of the value because they're desperate for money because they have to pay back the bank. So should the new federal government allow people to continue to to pay off their debts in kind. Many bonds were issued during the Revolution by the Continental Congress to pay soldiers and lenders. So bonds. Should these bonds be paid back in full? Or just a small amount for each dollar? Just to whom, just to those to whom they were originally issued, or not at all? Because I said, there are rich men going around saying, I know you need money. I will buy the bond for you on 10% of its value. So at least you got something now in your hands. What are we going to do with these bonds? Currently, there is no national law determining who should be allowed to vote in elections. Some states require people to own a certain amount of property to vote. Right? The idea is that you're not a responsible voter if you don't have some property, that makes you take seriously your vote, because you have property, you own a business, so you need to own property to be allowed to vote in the government because you have an important interest in the government. Only one state, New Jersey, allows women to vote. So that's interesting. New Jersey did allow women to vote. In most states, Black people may not vote, even if they are free. Even if Blacks are living in New York and Pennsylvania, they still are not allowed to vote, even though they're free. Who should be allowed to vote in general elections? So those are the issues that you should address at the Constitutional Convention. And some are more important to you than others, right? So if you're a farmer, this is going to be particularly important to you. But these other issues are also important. You're a worker. What do we do about slavery? Is slavery good? Slavery bad? You might say, if you're a worker, well, slavery is bad because the people that own slaves, they don't have to pay those people wages. So that keeps my wages low if I'm a worker, because they have this free labor that they own as slaves. On the other hand, what if we free those enslaved people, they're going to compete with me for wages. So do I want slavery to be abolished? Do I want slavery to be expanded? Do we allow slavery to expand out into Ohio, the newly independent state, new states that will emerge? Because we all know America is going to expand out west. I mean, that was also part of the understanding of forming this new government. How are we going to expand the United States out west? And does that mean slavery is going to expand out west? If you're a poor person, you're a poor white person who wants to make a profit and benefit, you can't grow cotton in Ohio. It's too far north. But if you want to expand out west in the South, to the southern part of the United States west, you might be more favorable to slavery because you can grow cotton and tobacco, but cotton in particular in those areas. But then if you're a worker, I don't know. I mean, you don't need slaves only to grow cotton. Maybe slaves can work also in factories and businesses. So these are tensions which eventually, of course, they're going to result in a war, another war 90 years later, the Civil War. And it's going to be surprisingly violent and bloody. And so these tensions are going to lead to, eventually, they're going to lead to war. But at the time, the tensions are already there when the Constitution is being written. So, so again, to go back to the cyber campus, it says here, sorry, I have an internet issue. I was sent out of room farmer. So we go back to the breakout rooms and let's see, farmer. So I don't know. You have to tell me where you're at. If you're, I don't know where you. Oh, so assigned to farmer. Okay, so I assign you to farmer. There you go. So please join farmer, Itam. Okay, so okay, yeah, I'm currently broadcasting to all rooms. Okay, good. So look at those items that are on the cyber campus. So we go back to cyber campus and you can see the material. So please, farmers, download the farmers, enslaved, download the enslaved, bankers, merchants, download yours, workers, download your information, planners, download your information, and make a statement for each of your groups at the Constitutional Convention regarding each of those burning issues, And so let me go back to the breakout rooms And we have to pick somebody from each of the groups to speak for each of the groups first, although other people can join in. So if I go to Siri here, and let me see here, I go to Siri and I click on Siri. So we have let me see here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in workers here. So let me go back to Zoom. And I think you can see the room here. So we have to choose one from these 5 people here. So let me ask Siri. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 5.
It's 1.
Okay, so Yerinyo, you are going to speak for the workers. So bankers, merchants. Let's again ask Siri for you have 4 here. So Siri, pick a number between 1 and 4.
It's 3.
Okay, so that's Pak Miji. Pak Miji is going to speak for bankers, merchants. Choi Do Hyun has disappeared, so has not joined the room. So Marie, we have 3 people for enslaved people. So let me ask Siri to pick a person from that group. So Siri, pick a number between 1 and 3.
It's 3.
So that's Ji Sung Chon is going to speak for enslaved people. Farmers, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let me ask Siri, pick a number between 1 and 4. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 4.
It's 3.
Okay, so it's Kim Nam Chu is going to speak for farmers. And planners, boo, planners, boo, because of course they're the one that own the slaves. They're the enslavers. The enslavers, you're the enslavers. Who's going to speak for the rich aristocrat? Enslavers. So let's see. Siri, pick a number between, sorry. So close that then. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 4.
That would be 1.
Okay, so Chung Do Jin is going to speak for the enslavers. The enslavers, the planters. Boo, planters. So please take a few minutes, talk with each other, and decide what your group's positions are going to be on those burning issues. And of course, you have limited time to speak. So emphasize what's most important to you that must be in the Constitution, this new Constitution for this new, stronger federal government on these issues, your group's position on all of them, but make sure you emphasize what's most important to you, okay? So you can go to work. So I assume you can communicate with each other. You can talk to each other, right? So please talk to each other and help prepare your group leader to make your statement of your group to the Constitutional Convention as to what should be in the Constitution. Keep in mind, right? I mean, the Americans are also taught that the Constitutional Convention and the writing of the Constitution was an amazing event led by amazing people, right? So you look at U.S. Constitutional Convention. This is typically how it's described in the United States. Here's another famous propaganda picture image. Let me see, just to show you here, to share the screen. Get this out of the way, share screen, and we go to right here. Okay, share. So here you can see the entrance in Wikipedia for the Constitutional Convention of the United States. And you can see, this is the situation in 1789. So just 5 years after the War of Independence ended, we're already talking about how expanding out west. And of course, this is the Northwest Territory. And so just to show you the image of the, where's the famous picture of the Constitutional Convention? And I don't see the famous picture of the Constitutional Convention. Where is that? There it is. Okay, there it is. Seen at the signing of the Constitutional Convention by Howard Chandler Christie, 1940. So there's George Washington. I mean, he looks like a god, right? There's George Washington. He's chair of the Constitutional Convention. He's the president of the convention. He was chosen to be the president of the convention. There's Benjamin Franklin. There's I think James Madison, who did most of the work in writing the constitutional document. There's Alexander Hamilton. These are other individuals. This is like the meeting of the demigods, right? The demigods in Greek mythology, right? Writing the Constitution. This was an amazing event that in human history. And so these are, this is where they met. And of course, they were meeting in secret. They closed the windows, and this is where they wrote the Constitution. So you can talk to each other, right? You can talk to each other, right? So, okay, workers, you're helping Yadin prepare her presentation. If you want to talk, you have to unmute.
Yes, we were gonna like start talking about it, but Professor, can you like tell us one more time what should we like exactly talk about, please?
Those 4 burning issues. Talk about your group's position on these burning issues: slavery, payment in kind, bonds, and voting.
Oh, so we have to do all of those.
Yeah,
like,
but some are going to be more important to you as workers than others, right? For example, slavery can be important, as I mentioned, because at the one hand, you're competing. You get paid for your work, right? But how are you supposed to compete for payment if a big part of American economy is based upon enslaved people who don't get paid anything? So that means your wages are going to be really low. So what's your views on slavery? And it's a complicated topic. It'll be a complicated topic throughout American history, even up to the present, because of the legacy of slavery, how rich, powerful people use racism to divide the working class and keep them divided so they can't organize. But even back then, right? I mean, do you really want slavery to be abolished? Maybe you do, because you don't want to compete against people who can't demand money for payment. Slaves, they're not paid, right? So that means they're free labor. So how are you supposed to compete against free labor? How are you going to demand more money to be paid for your work if half the economy is based upon people who work for nothing?
Oh, I see. Okay,
But and if they do become free and you abolish slavery, you have all these people who are going to compete with you for wages, right? They're going to increase the labor supply, the paid labor supply. So this is going to be reflected, for example, in the issue of should slavery be allowed to expand out west? That's going to be the burning issue in early American history up through the Civil War, because you don't want slavery to expand it in the northern part of America, where you don't even want it anyway, because you can't grow cotton there. Cotton and tobacco can't grow in those areas. Corn and wheat and other commodities can grow there. You can raise cattle there, and people want meat, particularly as they're doing hard work. So and farmers, of course, they have complicated issues, because of course the planters are farmers, but they own these huge plantations of thousands of acres to grow cotton. But you want farmers, they're more interested in growing crops that are in other areas that you need, particularly as the American economy grows and begins to industrialize. There are people that are going to work in the cities, and they need to be fed in the cities. They're not farmers, but they need to eat. So there's a demand for bread. There's a demand for meat. There's a demand for commodities to supply an emerging working class. That's you, right? So maybe you have some kind of an alliance with farmers. You have a political alliance with farmers, because the farmers are, they're not interested in expanding slavery. at least not up in the north. Again, slaves are a really expensive item to buy. You got to be rich to own slaves. You got to be rich to buy slaves. Most people do not have the money to buy slaves. Right? Even in the South, most white men could not afford to own black people. So this is a rich early capitalist invention, slavery. Only rich capitalists can really exploit it. And it's already out of date because first off, how efficient do you think those slaves would be as workers in factories? Not very efficient. They're not motivated, obviously. You got to motivate them by torturing them. You don't bring in enough cotton, we're going to whip you. You're gonna make those people work in a steel factory as slaves? That's not going to. You can't educate them because you don't want them to be smart. Because if they're smart and they learn to read and write, they're going to become unhappy about being slaves. So and you need an educated world. Increasingly, you need people who are able to think, to be autonomous, independent actors, to work in factories. You need a modern labor force. Slavery is this outmoded, inefficient way of doing things from the medieval times. But it's a way of life. An entire culture in the South emerges on the basis that there's a hierarchy between rich people, white people and black people, and even different kind of colors of black people. And of course, if you're a poor white person, it's kind of nice because you don't even have to do anything. You don't have to be rich and feel better than half the population around you because you're white. You were born white. So I don't have to do anything. I'm happy because I know I'm superior to so many other people just because I was born this way. I'm superior to black people and I'm superior to women. So I like being conservative. So yeah, it's complicated. Okay. So any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Bankers, merchants, are you getting organized? Who's speaking for you? Is it Cui Yin? No, it's Pak Mi Ji. So you have to unmute. Are you able to? You understand what you need to do?
Yeah, right, but we didn't prepare yet.
Okay, but you need to come up with your position on these 4 topics, right? These 4 burning issues, right?
Okay.
That's your issue. So you are your bankers yeah, what are you? Bankers, merchants?
Yeah.
Okay. So you depend upon trade with Britain, and Britain wants that cotton that the slave owners, the planters are producing. And you fund this trade, this business. You're merchants, you own the ships, you own the shipping companies, the ports. But at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity to make more money in new emerging industries like iron production and also there's all this land out west that needs loans for people that are producing new kinds of agriculture, focusing more on supplying these new emerging cities where people don't grow their own food; they got to buy their food, right? In stores that the farmers are growing, and so you see lots of opportunities to make more money in the new emerging industrial economy that's beginning in the early 19th century. So. Really take off in the early 19th century. So you understand you need to come up with a position on these 4 issues. And as bankers, merchants, you're going to be really interested in on these bonds, right? Okay, so should they be paid back in full or not? So any questions? If not, I will talk to other groups as well. So stop share, breakout rooms, leave room. So enslaved people,
Yes.
what are you going to demand?
Mm.
What will you demand at the Constitutional Convention?
About the reward for enslaved life.
Of course, you were not at the Constitutional Convention, and you represent. I mean, in the slave owning states, you represent at least 40% of the population, maybe half, in some of these states. So you're a big portion of the U.S. overall U.S. population at this time. But since you're enslaved, you're not considered citizen. You're not well. That would be settled in the middle of the 19th century, right? Are you citizens or not? What are you? If you're enslaved, you're not. You have to. Are you citizens? Well, what is the right of somebody born in America? Should they automatically give them the right to vote? Now it is, right? Now you automatically get the right to vote when you turn 18, unless you commit a crime, a serious crime. And in some states, the right to vote is taken away, although that's under challenge. But women are citizens. They don't get the right to vote everywhere in America until 1920.
Yeah.
So what does it mean? The point is that the U.S. Constitution was written by representatives representing a very small portion of the population, land owning, property owning white men, not representing women, not representing black people, not representing poor white people. And again, we say, yeah, that's really interesting. But again, Americans, until the present, they view the Constitution as like the Bible. It's a holy document. It's this amazing thing that represents, fundamental American values, and along with the Declaration of Independence. It's like the Bible, right? The Bible, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. Oh, the Constitution. You have to respect the Constitution, although Donald Trump has talked about terminating the Constitution, and Donald Trump has a lot of supporters, even though he's a threat to the constitutional order. Donald Trump tried to overturn the Constitution in 2021, 3.5 years ago. So Americans are kind of schizophrenic about this, and they're kind of schizophrenic about it. They're kind of crazy about it because of you. Dealing with black people, like black people, they're not anything that allows black people to get more real equality. I don't know. For a lot of white people, I mean, Donald Trump, that's implicit in Donald Trump's claim that he won the election, but it was stolen from him in 2020, 4 years ago. He claims that there was fraud. What he's really claiming is that somehow these black people, these brown people, these radicals in American cities, where you have radical ideas and degenerate lifestyles of people that live in American urban poor centers, and the college professors that appeal to them, that they're not really genuine Americans. We allow them to vote because we're nice, but they're not really genuine Americans. They're taking away America from the traditional American values represented by traditional Americans, God-fearing Christian conservative Americans who go to church, who listen to the moksha, the minister. And what does the moksha say? That there's a man and there's a woman. There are two genders. Gay rights is BS. Gay marriage is garbage. Transgenderism is brainwashing from Satan. All of the things that feminists talk about, that gender's fluid, it's not binary, that, two men should be able to marry each other, two women should be able to marry each other. You can change your gender. That's all. That's evil. And that's evilness propagated by people that hate America, and they hate America because they're not happy with themselves, because America doesn't respect them enough. And those people become college professors and try to make their students hate America too. Make them read Howard Zinn in American universities. I mean, I'm not the only one making this argument. Others have made this point, that that's the code language in Donald Trump's claim that the election was stolen from him in 2020, was rigged, because things were going on in places where threats to traditional American values, Christian, conservative, white values, ideals, somehow have gotten too influential in America, and they threaten America, right? By saying, no, you don't hire the best people for position. You got to make sure you hire Black people. You got to make sure you hire a quota of women. You got to make sure you hire a quota of Hispanic people. You've got to make sure that you promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, inclusion through affirmative action. You don't hire the best. You got to be diverse. You got to make sure you have some gay people working for you. Particularly, like, for example, at universities. This is the place where this is most advanced. We have too many white men professors. We got to make sure we have women professors, Black professors, Hispanic professors, even gay professors, because you have to look like the diversity of all of American society, even though they're not the best qualified. Those people are a threat to America, according to Donald Trump. They're going to destroy the country if we let them. If we let them. And so it goes back to you, the legacy of slavery. I know slavery ends in the 1860s, but this claim that we need to have the federal government require people to hire Black professors and black lawyers and Black doctors and Black civil servants. In other words, we're just getting away from this notion that you compete and the people that are best qualified rise to the top. No. What counts is the color of your skin. What kind of sex you like to have. I mean, outrageous changes in American society. That's Donald Trump's base of support. But this legacy of slavery, that's where it's most embodied, right? Because that's the great American rejection of individual merit. Now, of course, the people that support Donald Trump said, hey, slavery ended in the 1860s. Segregation, that ended a long time ago. I mean, how long are you going to have affirmative action? We started in the 1960s. We're going to continue it forever? It's got to end sometime. Here we are in 2024. Affirmative action began, let's say, 1964. So that's 60 years, 64 to 24. No, we're going to do forever. We can't, because we'll never have true equality unless we insist forever and ever that a big business has to have, only 55%, 60% white men, or at most, and then you have to have these quotas: diversity, equity, inclusion. Okay, I'll leave the room and go talk to somebody else. Any questions?
No.
If no, okay, bye. Farmers, what do you want?
We don't want anything. Oh.
Oh, okay. You know what you want. All right, good. You know what you want regarding slavery and payment in kind and bonds. Although payment in kind is an interesting issue. Of course, we're writing the Constitution at the end of the 18th century. So it's before industrialization really accelerates. Industrialization in the American economy will really begin to accelerate in the early part of the 19th century. And then with the Civil War, it just really takes off, right? I mean, they're making iron in America at this time. But basically this notion, it's at the dawn of the beginning of industrialization. And so people are starting to work in factories, but still, 90% of Americans are work on the land. Maybe 90, I mean, I don't know, is it about 90%? Probably 90% of the population still make their living on agriculture. I mean, in 1787. But that's quickly changing. And of course, as it changes, the bankers and the merchants, they're always looking for new ways to make more money. So you used to pay them in pigs and cows and corn. They don't want pigs and cows. They want money. So they can use that money to loan it to these new people that are doing that want to build a factory. What are they going to do with a cow? They'll sell the cow, but they want money. They want to do loans, right? They want to make loans, and they want to get paid and loans, and they want to make loans, and they want to get paid in money and loans and money. And of course, new and businesses are coming in and going out of business. Farmers go out of business and come into business. I mean, it's your job to, from the bankers and merchants' point of view, it's your job, your responsibility to get into the right field of business. And if you're not competitive, like you're raising too many pigs, that's your problem. Get into another line of business. It's not my job to sell your pig to make money. If you can't make a product that sells, that's your fault. If you can't make a product that's not making enough money, then you go out of business. And you pay, but you're gonna pay me what you owe me, and if not, I'm gonna take your farm. And I don't care what you did in the American Revolutionary War. I don't care. I don't care. It's not my concern. I work with money, not pigs. You work with pigs to make money. That's how it works. So again, when we look at who wrote the US Constitution, you're not really there at the Constitutional Convention. The people that write the Constitution, they're all rich white men. I mean, and really rich. They're not pig farmers. They're not corn farmers. They're planters who own thousands of acres of land. They're merchants that then take the cotton grown on by these planters and their enslaved people, and then organize the sale to Britain for use in the new British textile factories. You're not really at the convention, but we'll let you be there anyway because you are the future. Because as America does industrialize, they're going to need you to feed the working classes who don't farm. They work in factories. They got to be fed. And you're going to grow the pigs and the cows and the corn and the wheat, at least in the northern part of America, where that can be done. And you can't grow cotton there. You can't grow cotton north of the Ohio River. You can't grow tobacco north of the Ohio River. Okay, thank you. Oh, the planters, the bad guys, the enslavers. Although, of course, George Washington was also an enslaver. He owned hundreds of slaves. We don't really know how many. I mean, he's a weird guy. George Washington he owned vast tracts of land. He owned hundreds of slaves, but like we don't know what happened with all of his money. I mean, at least I investigate. I mean, I haven't really looked into it, but like, for example, first off, he didn't have any children. So he didn't pass off his property to a son. He didn't have any sons. He didn't, for whatever reason, his marriage didn't produce offspring, which, maybe history would have been different if he had, because it wouldn't have taken much for people to say, well, maybe George Washington should become a king and he'll make his son the next king. But he didn't have any children, so he couldn't have his son as the next leader. He adopted people, but like, I don't know what happened. They say he owned a huge amount of land and hundreds of slaves, but it's like it just disappeared. I don't know what property. I don't know anywhere in America where you can say this was his. I mean, there are places where he lived that are like part of the national park system, but like they say he owned vast amounts of land in America, and particularly out west, and it's all gone. I don't know if he ever owned it. So, but you are the planters. You're the ones who, you're not the only ones, but a lot of you do the fighting in the war. You're the leaders of the independence revolution. Like Thomas Jefferson, he owned slaves, right? He wrote the Declaration of Independence. He was at the Constitutional Convention. We'll see. We'll look at who wrote the Constitution. As I already posted that material on the website, right? So who's going to speak for you? It was Chung Du-jin. So okay. So we're going to have to. Any questions? If you want to speak, you have to unmute yourself. So. Okay, you don't have any questions, then we're going to have to move a little bit more quickly here because this is taking a little bit of time. So I have to leave the room. Okay, I'm going to close out the rooms and ask each of the individuals who's been assigned to tell us your position on the burning issues at the Constitutional Convention. Oh, okay. And so who's going to speak first at the Constitutional Convention? So let's ask Siri. We have 5 groups. So let me ask Siri to pick a number between 1 and 5. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 5. Oh, I'm sorry. One more time here. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 5.
It's 5.
Okay, so that means boo planters, boo enslavers. Okay, planters, aristocrats, Yangban, enslavers. Chung Du-jin, what is your group's position on the burning issues of the day at the Constitutional Convention? And again, just to make sure everybody's able to see this here, go back to share screen and here. So, Chung Du-jin, what is your position on slavery?
So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So our group decided that since during the process of American Revolution, the planters have contributed a lot with their economic resources and also be part of the army. So it might be desirable if the Constitution acknowledge a minimum of the slavery, because the planters need needed as their labor sources. So they might want to influence to the federal government to maximize their economic profits, and it has to be culminated by the acknowledgement of like certain type of like slavery form.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the U.S. Constitution never uses the word slavery, but it does talk about those termed to service. So they use a euphemism. In other words, we already knew back then that this is an ugly issue, an ugly problem, right? So because they won't use the word slavery in the Constitution, they make roundabout references to it. It's embarrassing, right? But it's the foundation for much of the economy. It's foundation for much of the way of life. Remember to mention George Washington owned hundreds of slaves. Thomas Jefferson owned many slaves. Many of them owned slaves. It was, I mean, it's not because they're like necessarily bad people. That's how these colonies were founded. All the European colonies in North and South, at least in the southern parts of North and South America, they exploited enslaved labor. The British, the French, the Portuguese, the Spanish. That's how these colonies were viable economically. They all exploited slavery. So that's the system that the American revolutionaries inherited. I mean, if you're going to abolish slavery in 1787, I mean, I don't know how you do that and keep the economy functioning. I mean, it would have been a radical disruption. Now, it will be when but later, but that's as the United States develops. And should the Constitution continue to allow the slave trade? I mean, you're enforcing, you're buying African slaves from slavers in Africa and transporting them to America in horrible conditions. You know, at least 10% died on the trip, right? From Africa in horrible conditions in slave ships. Should you continue to allow this slave trade? Chung Du-jin?
I don't.
Yes.
No.
And of course, other people, we're running out of time. You only have 20 minutes left. So, of course, what they came to a compromise, like they did throughout the Constitution is all about compromises. It's all about compromises. So we already talked about in the other classes, in the other groups, about how workers are going to be kind of skeptical about slavery. Farmers are going to be kind of skeptical about slavery because, you know, how are you going to compete with rich planters who have free labor, enslaved free labor, and have to pay wages? They just got to feed them, right? I mean, how are you going to compete with that? So they're not really happy with slavery. Bankers and merchants, they'll go with whoever's going to promise them to make more money. But the new emerging economy that becomes industrialization, that doesn't really take off until the beginning of the 19th century. So another, 30 years from now. 90% of people are still farmers and somehow involved in farming in America, whether they're enslaved people or white people. So what they'll do, they'll say it's in the Constitution that this has to stop, I think, by 1800, but it continues until 1800. So again, you want to get everybody on board, co-opt everybody, so they're going to fight to defend this United States, because the British and the French could come back with their navy and their military, and they will. There'll be another war in 1812. The War of 1812, and there was a quasi war with the French after the French Revolution happened. It wasn't a declared war, but there was a navy war between America. So there's already concern around they're going to be fighting again with the French and the British. So you got to get you on board, and that means you got to make some compromise. You got to definitely feel that your business and your entire lifestyle, your way of thinking, about who you are, is somehow going to be protected. Let's go to the next group here. Let me see here. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 4.
It's 4.
4. And so who's 4? So we go to 4 here, and we go to breakout rooms, and we go here to back to Zoom. Second here, Zoom, and no, that's not what I want. I got to make sure I don't close the wrong thing. Stop share. And so breakout rooms. So 4 is farmers. Yay, farmers. So Park Yun-ji, you're speaking for the farmers. What's your position on the burning issues here?
Oh, yeah.
I guess you're going to focus on paying back in kind. Should the government allow you to be able to continue to pay back your loans and your debts with the things you produce, like, you know, corn, pigs, tobacco? You go to the bank and you say, here's what I owe you. Here's a pig.
Yeah, we just discussed about question 3 below this handout. So we discussed about Shays Rebellion. So we think we don't like farmers basically were struggling with literally with living. So they didn't have money, and they were badly in debt, like this handout mentioned, and also the federal government made the structure of exploitation. So farmers didn't have any choice except making the revolution. So but we also thought of after the revolution, farmers would have no idea with electing new leader or how to organize new government, and also we thought farmers didn't have that much big power to organize new government and elect new leader, not even for ideas.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, farmers are not going to be represented at the Constitutional Convention as well, along with other groups. So, I mean, again, as I mentioned, right, there were rich people going around saying, I'll buy your bond off of you for 10% of its face value so that you get some money right away, right now, because you desperately need this money. So this issue about paying back the bonds in full, that's not something you're going to be concerned about because you don't have the bonds anymore. You sold them off. You sold them at 10% of their value to somebody who's going to give you the money you needed right now. So that's an important point. So, but we need to move on here. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 3.
It's 3.
Enslaved people! Hooray, enslaved people! So that, who's speaking for the enslaved people? It was, who was it? Ji Sung-jun? Was it you?
Yes.
Okay, so what should slavery be legal in any of the United States?
Sorry.
So should slavery be legal?
Yes.
No. Why do you want slavery to be legal? You're an enslaved person. These are the issues, right? So
Yes.
should slavery continue?
No.
No. Okay, so and let's see here. Let's see, but of course you're not at a constitutional convention either, because you're an enslaved person. So Siri, pick a number between 1 and 2.
It's 2.
Oh, okay. Bankers, merchants. So Pak Miji.
Yes.
So you're an important person. You're a rich banker merchant. You, along with the planters, took the lead in bringing about this revolution. So should bonds be paid back in full or just a small amount for each dollar? Just
Pay
Mhm.
full, we think.
You think they should be paid back in full?
Yep.
Yes, because you probably went around, you were the rich person going around offering to buy out these bonds from these poor farmers and workers who bought the bonds, thought they were making an investment. They didn't know if and when they would ever get their money back. They desperately needed the money. So you said, I'll give you 10% of the value of the bond right now. And so they gave it to you. You gave them 10 cents on the dollar. And now you're going to write the Constitution, and you're going to put in the Constitution that all bonds have to be paid back in full. And you're going to make lots of money, 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 money. Good job, bankers, merchants.
Okay, regarding the
Should banks be allowed to be continue? Can people continue to pay back the banks with their cows and pigs and corn? Should the government continue to allow people to pay back in kind with their products rather than money?
they pay back, they should pay by to money.
Yes, in money. Darn right. In money, right? You don't want a pig. You don't want a cow. That's their job to sell that. Their job is, their responsibility is to be involved in a business that makes money. And if they're involved in unprofitable business like raising cows, that's their fault. Or if the price of pigs and cows is too low, that's not your responsibility to be concerned about that. Your job is to make loans to businesses that make money. And if they can't make money, then they put up their business as collateral, well, then they lose their land. Okay. And finally, workers, who are also not really represented at the convention. So speaking for workers, so that's who's speaking for workers? Who's yo. So should slavery be legal?
Actually, we disagree for continuing the slavery system as a legal system in the US because slavery is an exploitative system that destroys the labor market. So enslaved individuals are forced to work under harsh conditions without fair compensation. And this not only undermines their well-being, but also creates unfair competitions in the labor market. Like free laborers, including myself, workers, are at a disadvantage because the presence of slavery keeps wages artificially low and working conditions poor. So all of these reasons we disagree for the slavery system.
Okay. So, but what about the concern that if you free these slaves, they're going to be free, they're going to compete with you in the labor pool. They're going to become the labor supply. The market for labor will be flooded with people wanting to be paid for their labor, and it's going to drive down wages.
Yes. This will lead to like suppressed wages and fewer opportunities for us who are working legally and ethically.
Yeah. So what's your solution?
So we want to like try our best to like get rid of this like slavery system, like claiming to the government for lots of like reasons. For example, the human rights or for the economical problems. Because like if workers cannot earn money, then it also influences the economical system in the society. We are also, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have mixed feelings about this. One of your responses, one of the answers to this dilemma is to say, go west, young man, as I think Horace Greeley said, go west, go stop being a worker and go take some land out west and start your own farm and become a farmer businessman, or work out west somewhere where you don't have to. You can make your own. If you can avoid being a poor worker, you will. So you want to make money. And one way to make money is to go out west and become a businessman, farmer, and businessman out in the new territories that are opening up. If you stay in the cities, you're probably going to be kind of nervous about slavery becoming legal, because you can see all these enslaved Black people, and they're going to become workers as well if they become free. And that's going to drive down wages. So you will see, like later on, workers in American cities will have mixed feelings about Black people becoming free, because then they know that's going to have an impact on their wages, because they're going to have a bunch of competitors for jobs to be hired. I mean, if they're free, they're no longer enslaved people. They have free choice to supposedly go work wherever they want to go work, so they can compete for jobs. If they're property, if they're owned as slaves, they can't compete. They got to work according to what the master tells them to work. So and so you'll see some ugly events, like even during the Civil War, including like New York City had a lot of people living there. And there was even a talk in New York City joining the Confederacy during the Civil War, because there are a lot of people living in New York City that felt threatened by Black people becoming free, because they're going to take the jobs. They're going to compete with free white people for jobs in the ports and businesses of New York City in the 1860s. So, and of course, that will always remain. I mean, you find strong racism and hostility to Black people among workers, right? People that believe that they might be in competition with those Blacks and other people for jobs, poor white people, because they believe, rightly or wrongly, that Black people are competitors. So we only have 6 minutes left in the class. And so I just want to highlight to you some other points to point out here in the time remaining. If I can go to Zoom here, and what happened to see Zoom? Where's the Zoom? Zoom. That's not what I want. Zoom. Okay, so we go to we go here to share, and we go back to Cyber Campus, and just to show if I can, without accidentally closing the. Let's see here. Let me go back to Cyber Campus, and here we go, like that. So there, share the screen. Cyber Campus here. Okay, share, and there you can see the people that wrote the Constitution. Right, they're all rich white men. Right, here are the people that wrote the Constitution, and of course, towns and cities and states and institutions and universities are all named after these. Are all heroes, right? You can see how many of them were merchants and bankers. How many of them were planters and owned slaves? And so the Constitution is going to reflect their economic interests, right? They're all rich, wealthy, powerful men, right? You're not going to find any farmers, any workers, not to mention any enslaved people, right? So that's one group. You look at the other group here that wrote the Constitution, Part 2. And of course, these people are considered gods, right? These are famous people. These are the framers, we call them, the founding fathers, the founding Abujidul, the founding or the framers, right? George Washington, you can look at them in terms of their interests. According to Flynn, this man was the richest man in America, not George Washington. This man, Robert Morris, not him. Or no, or one of these Morrises. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's Gouverneur Morris or Robert Morris. George Washington, supposedly, according to Daniel Flynn, he had to actually take a loan from somebody because he had money problems. He had wealth flow problems. George Washington, right? One of these Morris brothers was one of the richest men. I guess it'd be Governor Morris, because this guy died poor, right? And he says that's an example how Zin's wrong. He's a bad historian. And so if we look at the Constitution itself, and it says here, if we go back to the cyber campus, and we go back to cyber campus, and you actually look at the Constitution of what's in the Constitution. You look here, click here, who won? And you look at the, it says Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the Constitution that slavery, okay, so what does it say? So so we go to U.S. Constitution, and so we go to article, it says here, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1. So Article 1, Section 9, sorry, Article 1, Section 9, it says here, all right, can you see this? Just to show you, you can go through this on your own because we're not going to have enough time here. But again, I want to close I want to show the cyber. So where's the Zoom? Okay, so share the screen here, and you can look here at the share. It says here. Again, it never says the migration importation of such persons as any state now existing shall not think proper to admit shall not be prohibited. So the slave trade will continue until 1808. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state of those. Hold it. Slave trade, civil protections. So I guess they're saying this protects slavery in the states that have it, right? And it says here, Article 5 also explicitly to amend the Constitution to get rid of slavery would require amending the Constitution, which is very difficult, right? Amending the Constitution is very difficult. So again, slavery is embarrassing. So they don't really talk about it much in the Constitution, but they talk around it, right? And so Article 5 prevents amending the Constitution to change state law that allows slavery. So again, just to show you, it's a sensitive topic. Article 4, Section 2, Clause 3 says that fugitive slaves should be returned. If they run away to the north, they have to be returned. But again, it's a sensitive topic. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 says debts have to be paid in money. You can't be paid. They can't be paid in kind. You can't pay off your debts with products. You got to pay off your debts with money. Article 6, Clause 1 says that bonds shall be paid back in full, inherited from the Revolutionary War. So if you bought up all those bonds at 10%, you wrote the Constitution a way to make sure you get paid back in full. Pretty tricky, huh? The Constitution says nothing about who should be able to vote in elections. It says nothing about that. So again, in conclusion, which social groups or groups won the real Constitutional Convention? Bankers and merchants and planters. They're the ones. But again, you say, oh yeah, that's great. But again, Americans hold the Constitution in reverence. It's this image, it's its symbol itself. When I say defend the Constitution, take a note to defend the Constitution, it's like the Bible. It's a holy, holy document. Now it's been amended a lot since then, 27 times. And it's typically difficult to amend the Constitution, although it's not too difficult in one case, but we'll have to talk about that later. It's a weird case. So again, well, that's all for today. We're out of time. And thank you very much. Any questions? If no question, then we'll meet again on Wednesday for our debate, in-class debate. And so I'll read your paragraphs tomorrow, okay? Thank you. Bye.
Bye.